Midnight, June 5, 1944. At 300 meters above the ground, occupied France is nothing but a dark blur. Down below, the Germans have deliberately flooded the marshes of Normandy to turn every field into a deadly trap. Inside this aircraft, 18 men from the British 13th Parachute Battalion prepare to jump into the void. But there's one detail that history books almost always overlook. Among these men, there is a dog. His name is Bing, and he is about to jump. Bing was not a mascot. He was not a symbol of good luck. He was a tactical asset trained to sniff out mines, track lost units, and guide soldiers through the darkness across fields that smelled of gunpowder and death. On this night, the largest military invasion in history is about to begin. Thousands of paratroopers will be dropped over Normandy. Many will land in the wrong places. Entire battalions will become lost in flooded marshlands, without maps, without radios, without direction. And the only hope for some of these men will have 4 legs and a nose capable of detecting a human being from 800 meters away. This is the story of the D-Day paradox. The dogs who jumped into the darkness to save soldiers the world had already given up for lost. And by the end of this video, I guarantee, you will never look at the dog by your side the same way again. To understand how a domestic dog ended up parachuting into occupied France, we need to go back 1 year to a military program so secret it almost vanished from history. The war was at its most critical point. The Allies were planning the invasion of Europe, and British strategists faced a problem that no technology of the time could solve. Paratroopers would be the first to arrive. They would jump hours before the beach landings to destroy bridges, neutralize artillery batteries, and sow chaos behind enemy lines. But everyone knew one brutal truth: night jumps are chaotic. Winds scatter troops, pilots miss drop zones, men land in unknown places alone, in the dark. How do you regroup a battalion scattered across miles of enemy territory? In darkness, in silence, without using radios or flashlights that would reveal their position. The answer came from an unexpected place. The British War Office had already been experimenting with the use of dogs since the beginning of the conflict: sentinel dogs, messenger dogs, search dogs. But a group of officers came up with an idea that bordered on madness. What if dogs could jump alongside paratroopers? Thus, the secret Paradogs program was born. Dogs recruited from ordinary families across England, German shepherds, collies, Labradors donated by civilians who answered the call of the War Office. Bing, for example, was a mixed-breed German shepherd from a family in Labro. His original name was Brian, a family dog. He played with children in the backyard. But Bing had something the trainers quickly recognized: an unshakable temperament. Loud noises didn't make him flinch, heights didn't paralyze him, and his sense of smell was exceptional, even by canine standards. The training was progressive and meticulous. First, the dogs were conditioned to the deafening roar of aircraft engines, the massive Pratt & Whitney engines of the C-47 Dakota, roaring at over 100 decibels, a sound that made many dogs and many men panic. Then came the jumps. First from low platforms, then from towers, then from tethered balloons 300 meters above the ground, and finally, from aircraft in flight. The dogs wore specially adapted harnesses secured to their handlers' bodies or placed in padded containers with their own parachutes. They were trained to remain calm during freefall, not to resist the impact, and to immediately switch into work mode upon hitting the ground. Out of dozens of candidates, only a handful passed. 3 of them would become legends: Bing, Monty, Salvo. 3 ordinary dogs who were about to become the quietest heroes of the largest military operation in history. June 5, 1944. Just before midnight, aircraft from the British 6th Airborne Division crossed the English Channel in successive waves. Below them, German anti-aircraft fire awakens. The sky turns into a storm of metal and fire. The chaos begins even before the jump. Pilots, under heavy fire, veer off course. Some fly too fast. Others drop their paratroopers too early or too late. The result is catastrophic dispersion. Men who were meant to land together are now separated by miles of enemy territory. Bing jumps with his handler, Private Ken Bailey, of the 13th Parachute Battalion. The special container opens. The parachute deploys. And within seconds, the German Shepherd is on the ground in Normandy. But the ground is not what they expected. Field Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox, had ordered the fields behind the beaches to be flooded. Dikes were opened. Rivers were diverted. What maps showed as dry pastureland was, in reality, a maze of marshes with water up to the waist, in some places up to the neck. For a paratrooper carrying more than 30 kilos of equipment, that water was a silent death sentence. Many drowned that night without firing a single shot, trapped in their parachute harnesses, dragged under by the mud, unable to cry out for help because the enemy was only meters away. And this is where the dogs did something no compass, no map, and no radio could ever do. A dog's olfactory system is at least 10,000 times more sensitive than a human's. But numbers don't tell the whole story. A dog doesn't just detect smells, it maps them. Each nostril works independently, creating a stereoscopic image of the world through scent. It knows where a smell is coming from, how far away it is, and how long ago it passed through. That night, in the total darkness of the Normandy marshes, this ability meant the difference between life and death. Bing, Monty, and Salvo could detect the presence of Allied soldiers from hundreds of meters away. Through sweat, breath, the leather of their boots, the gunpowder on their hands, and they could do it in absolute silence. No barking, no drawing attention, just guiding their handlers with body movements they had trained for months. A slight tension on the leash to the left, allies in that direction. A sudden recoil, with the fur on the back of the neck raised. Danger ahead, possibly an enemy patrol, or something even worse. Mines. The fields of Normandy were seeded with millions of anti-personnel and anti-tank mines. In the darkness and in the water, they were completely invisible to the human eye. But not to the nose of a trained dog, capable of detecting the chemical compounds of TNT at concentrations that defy human comprehension, parts per trillion. Bing, according to accounts from the soldiers who served alongside him, would freeze like a stone statue upon detecting the scent of explosives. He wouldn't move, he wouldn't make a sound, he would simply stop, and that stillness meant, do not take another step. In the soaked darkness of Normandy, that four-legged statue saved lives. Again and again. But the most critical mission of the Paradogs that night was not detecting mines. It was finding the lost. The dispersion of the paratroopers was far worse than expected. Entire companies landed miles from their designated drop zones. Key officers, the only ones who knew the full details of the attack plan, were missing in the marshes. Without them, units had no orders, no coordination, no purpose. The British 6th Airborne Division had critical objectives that had to be completed before dawn, before the beach landings began. The most urgent, the destruction of the Merville Battery. 4 heavy German guns that could devastate the soldiers landing on Sword Beach. The original plan called for 750 men in the assault. Due to the dispersion, only 150 managed to regroup in time. How? In part because in the darkness of the marshes, the dogs became the invisible threads that stitched the shattered battalion back together. Bing and his handler moved through the flooded fields that night like an unseen beacon. The dog picked up scent trails left by paratroopers who had passed minutes or hours earlier. He followed those olfactory tracks like a hound pursuing prey. But instead of hunting, he was gathering, reconnecting, rebuilding the battalion piece by piece. Monty and Salvo played similar roles in other drop zones. Monty, a smaller and more agile dog, proved extraordinarily effective at detecting enemy patrols, silently alerting his human companions to the presence of German soldiers before any visual contact was possible. Salvo, who, according to records, stubbornly resisted his first training jump, but later became one of the most reliable dogs in the program, worked throughout the night guiding small groups across terrain that even local inhabitants avoided. When the first rays of light touched the fields of Normandy, something extraordinary had happened. The scattered battalions had regrouped. Key units were in position. The Merville battery was attacked, with a quarter of the planned force, in one of the most courageous actions of the entire war. And among the invisible threads that made it possible were 3 soaked, exhausted dogs, with red eyes from lack of sleep and paws cut by barbed wire. But Bing's story did not end at dawn. In the days following the landings, Bing remained on the front lines with the 13th Battalion. And it was during the advance beyond the beaches that something happened, something that reveals the deepest truth about these animals. During one of the advances, a German ambush opened fire. Mortar shrapnel struck Bing in the snout and in the paw. He was bleeding, limping, and he did not stop. Bing kept moving forward, kept scenting, kept alerting. There is a question that behavioral science has debated for decades. Do dogs feel loyalty, or is it just conditioning? Do they respond out of love or out of training? I'll tell you what the soldiers of the 13th Battalion would say when asked that question. They didn't answer. They simply looked at Bing, and that was enough. After the war, Bing was awarded the Dickin Medal, the highest military decoration given to an animal. The citation read, "For courage under fire in Normandy during the airborne landings of June 1944. Bing returned to England, back to the family that had donated him to the army years before, the Kahn family in Loughborough. The German shepherd who jumped into the darkness over Normandy, who sniffed out mines, who reunited lost battalions, who took mortar shrapnel and kept going, ended his days sleeping on a rug beside a fireplace. But the Kahn family's children always noticed something. When there were storms, when thunder shook the windows, Bing did not hide. He would stand up, become alert, and stare at the door, as if he were still waiting for the signal, as if there were still someone out there to find in the darkness. Today, 80 years later, the legacy of the paradogs is more alive than ever. Every military canine operating alongside American, British, Israeli, and Brazilian special forces carries in its blood the heritage of Bing, Monty, and Salvo, the dogs who proved in a single night of chaos that the nose is the most sophisticated technology on the battlefield. The electronic sensors we use today cost millions. They require batteries. They fail in humidity. They give false alarms. A trained dog costs a fraction of that, works on any terrain, in any climate, and does something no machine will ever do. It cares about the human beside it. But this story is not just about war. It's not just about the battlefield. It's about something that has existed for 15,000 years, since the first wolf approached a human fire and chose to stay. It's about a pact that was never written, never signed, but that has never, in the entire history of our species, been broken on their side. The dog sleeping on your couch right now carries within it the same olfactory system that guided soldiers through minefields, the same protective instinct that made Bing move forward while bleeding, the same irrational, beautifully irrational loyalty that drives a 20-kilo animal to face the entire darkness if it means you are safe on the other side. They were not just war heroes. They are living proof that the purest courage needs no words, needs no medals, needs no parachutes, only 4 paws and a heart that beats for someone beyond itself. If this story moved you, I want to ask you for one thing. Look at the dog by your side right now, or remember the one who once was. And in the comments tell us, what was the moment your dog showed you a courage or loyalty you will never forget? Because every one of these stories is proof that the Canine Mission never ended. Subscribe to Canine Mission, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who loves dogs, because this story deserves to be told. See you on the next mission.